The blue lights flashed 3 times. An unknown ship was asking to dock at Earth's orbital diplomatic station. This had not happened without warning before. Kang Han straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. As head of Earth's diplomatic team, it was his job to meet whoever was inside that ship. He walked quickly down the long white hall to the docking bay. "Any idea who they are?" he asked his assistant. "Their ship matches no known design, sir, but scans show 5 life forms. They are not human." The ship that floated into the docking bay was small and damaged. Black scorch marks covered one side. It looked like it had barely escaped a battle. When the door opened, strange beings stepped out. They were tall and thin with blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer. Their 4 eyes blinked nervously as they looked around. "I am Ambassador Tour of the Jora Confederation," the tallest one said in perfect English. "We come seeking Earth's help." Kang led them to the meeting room. The aliens sat awkwardly in chairs designed for humans. "We are dying," Tour said simply. "The Vex Dominion attacks our worlds one by one. They take our resources. They enslave our people. Soon we will be gone. Why come to us?" Kang asked. "Earth is new to space travel compared to other races. The others speak of you. They say humans are different. They say you know how to fight like no other species." Kang frowned. Humans had fought only small battles in space, nothing like a war against a whole alien empire. "I must speak with our Defense Council," he said. The Emergency Defense Council meeting was tense. 12 men and women sat around a large table. Some were in military uniform, others wore civilian clothes. "The Jora Confederation spans 23 star systems," Kang explained. "For 1,000 years, they lived in peace. They have almost no weapons." "And these Vex?" asked General Park. "A hive mind species, highly advanced technology. They have conquered 8 other civilizations before targeting the Jora." Admiral Li Jin, an older man with gray hair and a lined face, leaned forward. "What exactly do they want from us?" "Military aid. Protection. They believe humans can fight the Vex." The room erupted in argument. "Our main fleet is protecting our new colonies. We barely have enough ships as it is. We can't risk Earth's safety for aliens we just met." Admiral Li waited for the noise to die down. Then he smiled slightly. "We could send the 7th Fleet," he said. The room went quiet. Then someone laughed. "The leftovers. You're not serious." The 7th Fleet was a joke in the Earth Defense Force. Old ships, problem officers, equipment that other fleets didn't want. "They're still trained. Their ships still fly," Li said, "and we won't risk our main defensive capability." General Park shook her head. "We'd be sending them to die." "Perhaps," Li admitted, "but what's the alternative? Do nothing and watch a peaceful civilization be destroyed. What message does that send to the galaxy about humanity?" Kang watched the debate continue for hours. Finally, a vote was called. It was close, but the decision was made. "Very well," said the Council President. "The 7th Fleet will go to the aid of the Jora Confederation." As the meeting ended, Kang approached Admiral Li. "Why did you suggest this? Do you really think they have a chance?" Li's eyes were distant, as if seeing something far away. "Sometimes, Ambassador Kang, the best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't expect or understand." He smiled. "The 7th Fleet is full of people who don't do things the normal way. Maybe that's exactly what we need." Kang looked out the window at the damaged alien ship. "I hope you're right," he said, "for their sake." Admiral Li began walking toward the door. "I'll inform Captain Park Ta immediately. The 7th Fleet leaves in 3 days." Behind them, Earth turned slowly against the blackness of space, unaware that its fate was now tied to a civilization across the stars. Captain Park Ta stood on the bridge of the Dauntless and tried not to sigh. The old dreadnought had seen better days. The metal floor panels creaked when walked on. Half the screens flickered. The ship was over 30 years old, ancient by military standards. "Captain," "Admiral Lee is coming aboard," said a voice over the speaker. Park straightened his uniform. He was tall for a Korean, with short black hair and tired eyes. At 45, he was older than most captains. That's what happened when your career stalled in the 7th Fleet. "Prepare the welcome party," he ordered. Admiral Lee Jin walked slowly through the docking bay of the Dauntless. He nodded at the small line of officers waiting for him. They were a strange bunch, not the perfect soldiers seen on Earth recruitment posters. "Captain Park," he said, shaking hands. "Good to see you again." "Admiral," Park replied. "We weren't expecting a personal visit." Lee smiled. This mission needed a personal touch. They walked to the meeting room where the senior officers waited. Park made introductions. Lieutenant Kim Soo, tactical officer. A small woman with glasses nodded but didn't speak. Her eyes darted around the room, never settling on one place. Her file said she was brilliant with battle plans but terrible with people. Chief Engineer Bakdu. A man with grease-stained hands gave a half salute. He had been sent to the 7th Fleet after arguing with too many superior officers, but he could make broken machines work like magic. Navigation Officer Choi Min. A young man grinned widely. His record showed he was a flying genius who took too many risks. He had crashed 3 training ships before being assigned here. And Medical Officer John Hua. A serious-faced woman with a scar across her cheek stood straight. She had used experimental treatments not approved by Earth Medical Command. They worked, but rules were rules. Admiral Lee looked at them all and smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to save an alien civilization." The room was silent. Then Engineer Bake laughed. "Good joke, Admiral." "I'm not joking," Lee said. He pressed a button on the table, and a hologram appeared. It showed strange ships attacking blue-gray aliens. "This is the Jora Confederation. They are being conquered by the Vex Dominion. We're going to help them." Lieutenant Kim raised her hand slightly. "Sir, the 7th Fleet has 8 ships. All outdated, all understaffed." "I know what we have, Lieutenant," Lee said calmly. "Why us?" Captain Park asked the question everyone was thinking. Why not the main fleet? Because they're needed elsewhere. And because sometimes, Captain, the old ways work when the new ones fail. Lee looked at each of them. "You've all been sent to this fleet because you don't fit in. You break rules. You think differently. Maybe that's exactly what we need." Choi Min leaned forward. "So we're really going to fight aliens? For real?" Lee nodded. The Dauntless will lead. 7 other ships will join you. You leave tomorrow." After the Admiral left, the officers stayed in the room, thinking about his words. "Well," said Captain Park finally, "let's prepare the ship." As they walked out, Engineer Bake nudged Medical Officer Jun. "Think your strange medicines work on aliens?" She smiled slightly. "I guess we'll find out." The next day, the 7th Fleet departed Earth orbit. No ceremonies marked their leaving. No crowds waved flags. Just 8 old ships slipping quietly into the darkness of space. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Captain Park looked at the stars ahead. Navigation. Set course for the Jora homeworld. Choi Min's fingers danced across the controls. "Course set, Captain. It'll take us 12 days at top speed." "Then let's not waste time," Park said. "The 7th Fleet has a date with destiny." The ships accelerated, leaving Earth behind. None of them knew if they would ever see it again. 12 days in space felt like forever. The crew of the Dauntless spent the time preparing as best they could. They studied the little information they had on the Jora and the Vex. "We're entering the Eta Reticuli system," Choi Min announced from the navigation station. "Jora homeworld ahead." Captain Park stood from his chair. On the main screen, a yellow star grew larger. Around it circled 5 planets. "Scan the system," he ordered. Lieutenant Kim's fingers moved quickly across her console. "Captain, I'm detecting many ships. They don't match Jora designs." "The Vex," Park said quietly. Admiral Lee, who had come aboard the Dauntless for the journey, looked grim. "It appears they've already taken 3 of the 5 planets." The bridge was silent. Everyone knew what that meant. They were too late to save most of the Jorah worlds. "We need to contact the Jorah leadership," Park said. "But first—" "Captain," Kim interrupted, her voice higher than usual. "2 ships approaching. They've spotted us." "Battle stations," Park ordered calmly. "All hands prepare for combat." Red lights flashed throughout the ship. Crew members ran to their positions. "Should we try to hide?" asked Choi Min. "We could use the 3rd planet's moon for cover." Captain Park thought for a moment. Then he shook his head. "No. If we run now, we'll never stop running." He turned to the weapons officer. "Prepare main guns. Let's see what these Vex are made of." The 2 Vex ships grew larger on the screen. They were sleek and black, shaped like arrowheads. They moved with perfect coordination. "They're scanning us," Kim reported. "Their weapons are powering up." "Fire when ready," Park ordered. The Dauntless shook as its old guns fired. Bright energy beams shot across space toward the Vex ships. At the same time, the Vex fired back. "Evasive action," Park shouted. Choi Min's hands flew across the controls. The huge ship turned faster than it should have been able to, barely avoiding the Vex attack. "Their weapons are stronger than ours," Engineer Bake reported from the engine room. "But they seemed surprised by our movement." Lieutenant Kim was studying her screen. "Captain, look at this. They fired exactly where we would have been if we followed standard evasive patterns. They predicted our move, but we didn't make it." "Because Choi doesn't follow standard patterns," Park realized. Another blast rocked the ship. This time, it hit. "Damage on Deck 4, reported a crew member. "Sealing those sections now." Park looked at Kim. "What do you see in their attack pattern?" Kim hesitated, her social anxiety making it hard to speak up. But then her tactical mind took over. "They're perfect. Too perfect. They fight like computers, not people. Every move is by the book." She looked up. "They have no creativity." "Then let's show them some," said Park. "Choi, on my mark. Take us directly between the 2 Vex ships." "Sir?" Choi looked surprised. "That's suicide." "Just do it." Park turned to weapons. "And prepare to fire all guns, port and starboard, simultaneously." The bridge crew looked nervous, but they obeyed. "Now," Park ordered. The Dauntless surged forward, directly between the 2 Vex ships. As it passed, it fired all weapons at once. The sudden move caught the Vex by surprise. Their perfect formation broke as one ship tried to avoid collision. The human weapons struck both Vex ships. One exploded in a bright flash. The other spun away, damaged. Cheers erupted on the bridge. Even Lieutenant Kim smiled slightly. "They didn't expect that," Admiral Lee said. "They didn't expect us to be unpredictable." "Sir," Kim reported, "I'm receiving a transmission. It's from the Jorah homeworld." On the screen appeared a familiar blue-gray face. Ambassador Tour looked shocked. You destroyed a Vex ship," he said in disbelief. "No one has ever done that before." Captain Park straightened his uniform. "This is just the beginning, Ambassador. The 7th Fleet has arrived." The main room of the Jorah Command Center was filled with both humans and aliens. Maps of the star system floated as holograms in the air. Captain Park and Admiral Lee stood with Ambassador Tour, planning their next move. "We need to know more about how the Vex operate," Admiral Lee said. "One victory is good, but we need to understand their patterns." Park nodded. "I propose we split the fleet. Each ship can gather different information." Tour looked worried. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly. "Split up? Isn't that dangerous?" "Sometimes the best way to be safe is to be unpredictable," Lee explained. "The Vex won't expect it." On the Dauntless, Engineer Bakedu was taking apart a piece of equipment that had been salvaged from the damaged Vex ship. His hands were covered in a strange black fluid as he examined the alien technology. "This is both more advanced and more simple than our tech," he told Captain Park. "It's built for perfect function, but with no room for change or creativity." "Can we use anything from it?" Park asked. Bake grinned. "I think I can modify our old communication systems to jam theirs. Our outdated frequencies might confuse their signals." "Do it," Park ordered. "How long?" 2 days, maybe 3. "You have one." Lieutenant Kim Soo sat alone in her quarters, studying Vex movement patterns. Walls of data scrolled on her screens. Most people would see only numbers, but she saw a story. The door chimed, and she jumped. Captain Park entered. "What have you found?" he asked. Kim took a deep breath. Talking to people was hard for her, but talking about tactics was easier. "The Vex move like a single mind," she explained. "Each ship knows what the others will do. They never surprise each other." She pointed to a chart. "And they adapt quickly to new threats, but only in ways they've seen before. So they're predictable in their unpredictability." Park asked. Kim nodded. "Yes. And one more thing. Our older weapon systems seem to confuse them. It's like they don't have data on our outdated technology." For the first time in years, Park smiled. "So being outdated is our advantage." Choi Min piloted a small scout ship through the debris field of a destroyed moon. His hands moved with incredible speed as he navigated between large rocks and chunks of ice. "This is crazy," said his co-pilot. "We're too close to Vex territory." "That's why they won't look here," Choi replied. "No one would be stupid enough to fly this close, except me." His reckless flying allowed him to map Vex patrol routes that would have been impossible to chart otherwise. When a Vex ship suddenly appeared, Choi didn't run. Instead, he dove deeper into the debris, using maneuvers that were against every safety rule in the book. The Vex ship tried to follow but crashed into a large asteroid. It couldn't match Choi's wild flying. "See," Choi laughed. "Being crazy is an advantage." Medical Officer John Hua worked with Jora scientists to understand Vex biology from specimens found in crashed ships. "They're partly organic, partly machine," she explained to Admiral Lee. "And they share a connection, almost like a hive mind." "Can they be hurt?" Lee asked. "Yes," Jun replied. "Their connection is also a weakness. If we disrupt it, they become confused." Back on the _Dauntless _, Captain Park called a meeting with all ship captains from the 7th Fleet. "We've learned 3 important things," he said. "First, the Vex fight as one mind. Second, they don't understand our outdated technology. Third, they can't handle true unpredictability." Admiral Lee stood up. "This means we need to fight in exactly the way that got us all sent to the 7th Fleet. Break the rules. Take risks. Do the unexpected." One captain laughed. "So all those things that got us in trouble are now our greatest weapons." "Exactly," Park said. "The Vex have never met humans before. They've never encountered beings who can be so unpredictable, so creative in battle." He pointed to a map of the system. "And now we're going to show them what the misfits of humanity can really do." A month passed. The 7th Fleet was no longer running or hiding. They were hunting. On the bridge of the Dauntless Captain Park watched as his ships moved into position around a Vex supply line. "Are the jammers ready?" he asked. Engineer Beck's voice came through the speaker. "Ready, Captain. Our old radio waves will block their signals for 6 minutes. No more." 6 minutes is all we need," Park said. He turned to Lieutenant Kim. "Is everyone in position?" Kim nodded. Her tactical plan looked chaotic on the screen. Ships were placed in ways that made no sense by standard military rules. But that was the point. "Begin," ordered Park. The human ships activated Beck's jammers. Immediately, the Vex ships began to move erratically. Without their shared mind, they couldn't coordinate. The Seventh Fleet attacked from all directions at once. They didn't follow any pattern the Vex could understand. Some ships flew straight at the enemy. Others spun and twisted in ways that defied normal flight paths. In 6 minutes, it was over. 7 Vex supply ships destroyed. No human ships lost. On the Jorah homeworld, more and more aliens were volunteering to help the humans. They had never thought to fight back before. "We can connect this part of your ship to our power systems," a Jorah engineer told back. "It might make your weapons stronger." Bake looked at the strange mix of human and Jorah technology. "It shouldn't work," he said with a grin. "Let's do it." The odd combination created weapons that the Vex couldn't predict or understand. Old human guns powered by Jorah energy crystals. Communication systems that jumped between frequencies and patterns based on Jorah music. In her quiet room, Lieutenant Kim developed battle plans that looked like random chaos on paper. But each movement had a purpose. Each seemingly stupid risk was calculated to confuse the Vex. "They expect patterns," she explained to Admiral Lee. "So we give them anti-patterns." "You're a genius, Lieutenant," Lee said. Kim looked at the floor, uncomfortable with the praise. "No, sir. I just think differently." "Exactly," said Lee. "That's what we need." The next big test came at the 4th planet. 10,000 Jorah were trapped in a mining colony, surrounded by Vex ships. "We can't abandon them," Ambassador Tour begged. Captain Park studied the tactical display. A direct attack would fail. "The Vex have too many ships there." "Then we don't attack directly," said Choi Min with a smile. His plan was insane. The _Dauntless_ would pretend to be damaged and drift toward the planet. When the Vex came to investigate, the other human ships would attack from behind a nearby moon. "It's too risky," said one of the other captains. "That's why it will work," Park replied. The plan succeeded. While the Vex were confused by the apparently damaged Dauntless, Choi led a group of small ships through the planet's thick atmosphere, flying patterns that the Vex computers couldn't predict. They rescued all 10,000 Jorah. When they returned to the fleet, the aliens cheered the humans. They had never seen such bravery. The Vex sent larger ships, more advanced weapons, but the humans kept winning. Their outdated technology and unpredictable tactics continued to confuse the enemy. One day, a direct message came from the Vex command. "Humans of Earth," said a cold, mechanical voice. "Your interference is illogical. We have studied your planet from afar. You are divided. Primitive. You should not be able to defeat us." Admiral Lee recorded a simple reply. "You don't understand us, and that's why you'll lose." The message became a rallying cry for both humans and Jorah. All across the system, ships painted Lee's words on their sides. For the first time, the Jorah began to believe they might survive. And for the first time, the Vex began to fear. Captain Park stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, looking at a map of the system. One by one, planets were being freed from Vex control. "We're winning," he said quietly, almost unable to believe it. But none of them knew that a traitor was about to change everything. The meeting room was full of both humans and Jorah. They were planning their next attack on a major Vex base. "If we take this base, we can free the 2nd planet," Captain Park explained, pointing to a hologram map. Suddenly, the lights went out. When emergency power came on, alarms were ringing throughout the station. "What's happening?" Admiral Lee demanded. A crew member ran in. "Sir, 3 of our ships have been damaged by explosions. They were internal blasts." "Sabotage," Park said grimly. The chaos lasted for hours. One by one, they discovered that bombs had been placed on the Dauntless and 2 other ships. Captain Park was checking damage reports when a huge explosion rocked the bridge. A support beam fell, striking him in the chest. Medical Officer Jian rushed to his side. "Get him to medical. Now," she ordered. In the medical bay, Park drifted in and out of consciousness as John worked to save him. His ribs were broken, and he had internal bleeding. "Stay with me, Captain," she said, injecting medicine into his arm. "I didn't get sent to this fleet for following rules, remember? I'm going to try something new." Admiral Lee stood before the gathered crew. His face was hard with anger. "The bombs were placed by a group of Jorah who believe surrender is the only option," he announced. "They think that by destroying our ships, the Vex will spare their people." Ambassador Tur hung his head in shame. "I am sorry, Admiral. Not all my people are as brave as they should be." "The traitors have been caught," Lee continued. "But the damage is done. 3 ships are crippled, and Captain Park is badly injured." The room fell silent. Everyone respected Park. "Will he live?" Lieutenant Kim asked quietly. "Medical Officer Jian is doing everything she can," Lee replied. "But for now, I'm taking command of the _Dauntless_. In the medical bay, Jun noticed something strange in Park's blood tests. She ran them again, comparing his blood to samples from Vex bodies they had studied. "This can't be right," she whispered. She called in a Jorah scientist to confirm what she was seeing. "There are markers in human DNA that match certain Vex genetic patterns," the Jorah said, all 4 eyes wide with surprise. "What does it mean?" Jun asked. "I don't know, but these similarities shouldn't exist." Admiral Lee ordered a search of captured Vex databases. Lieutenant Kim spent days going through alien records, looking for any mention of humans. Finally, she found something. "Admiral, look at this," she said, pointing to her screen. "It's a Vex historical record. They call us the Lost Ones." Lee read the text carefully. According to this, humans might be descendants of a rebel Vex faction that broke away from the hive mind thousands of years ago. "That would explain why they're so interested in this star system," Kim said. "It sits between their territory and Earth, and why our unpredictability works against them. We think as individuals, not as a hive." Lee sat down heavily. "If this is true, we're fighting our distant relatives." When Captain Park finally woke up, Admiral Lee and Medical Officer Jian were waiting. "What happened?" Park asked weakly. "Sabotage," Lee said. "But we found something else." He explained what they had discovered about the possible connection between humans and Vex. Park tried to sit up. "So our greatest strength against them is that we broke away from their hive mind long ago," Lee finished. "We evolved to be unpredictable individuals." A Jorah officer burst into the room. "Admiral, the loyal Jorah forces have captured the remaining traitors. They wish to make amends for the betrayal." "How?" Lee asked. "By fighting alongside you," the Jorah replied. "They say they have learned that freedom means nothing without courage." Park looked at Lee. "Our fleet just got bigger." "Yes," Lee agreed. "But the Vex know who we are now, and they'll be coming with everything they have." Outside the medical bay window, the stars seemed to watch silently as the wounded fleet prepared for the biggest fight of all. The meeting room was full of both humans and Jorah. They were planning their next attack on a major Vex base. "If we take this base, we can free the second planet," Captain Park explained, pointing to a hologram map. Suddenly, the lights went out. When emergency power came on, alarms were ringing throughout the station. "What's happening?" Admiral Lee demanded. A crew member ran in. "Sir, 3 of our ships have been damaged by explosions. They were internal blasts." "Sabotage," Park said grimly. The chaos lasted for hours. One by one, they discovered that bombs had been placed on the _Dauntless_ and 2 other ships. Captain Park was checking damage reports when a huge explosion rocked the bridge. A support beam fell, striking him in the chest. Medical Officer Jian rushed to his side. "Get him to medical. Now," she ordered. In the medical bay, Park drifted in and out of consciousness as John worked to save him. His ribs were broken, and he had internal bleeding. "Stay with me, Captain," she said, injecting medicine into his arm. "I didn't get sent to this fleet for following rules, remember? I'm going to try something new." Admiral Lee stood before the gathered crew. His face was hard with anger. The bombs were placed by a group of Jorah who believe surrender is the only option, he announced. They think that by destroying our ships, the Vex will spare their people. Ambassador Tur hung his head in shame. I am sorry, Admiral. Not all my people are as brave as they should be. The traitors have been caught, Lee continued, but the damage is done. 3 ships are crippled, and Captain Park is badly injured. The room fell silent. Everyone respected Park. Will he live? Lieutenant Kim asked quietly. Medical Officer Jian is doing everything she can, Lee replied. But for now, I'm taking command of the _Dauntless _. In the medical bay, Jun noticed something strange in Park's blood tests. She ran them again, comparing his blood to samples from Vex bodies they had studied. This can't be right, she whispered. She called in a Jorah scientist to confirm what she was seeing. There are markers in human DNA that match certain Vex genetic patterns, the Jorah said, all 4 eyes wide with surprise. What does it mean? Jun asked. I don't know, but these similarities shouldn't exist. Admiral Lee ordered a search of captured Vex databases. Lieutenant Kim spent days going through alien records, looking for any mention of humans. Finally, she found something. Admiral, look at this, she said, pointing to her screen. It's a Vex historical record. They call us the Lost Ones. Lee read the text carefully. According to this, humans might be descendants of a rebel Vex faction that broke away from the hive mind thousands of years ago. That would explain why they're so interested in this star system, Kim said. It sits between their territory and Earth, and why our unpredictability works against them. We think as individuals, not as a hive. Lee sat down heavily. If this is true, we're fighting our distant relatives. When Captain Park finally woke up, Admiral Lee and Medical Officer Jun were waiting. What happened? Park asked weakly. Sabotage, Lee said. But we found something else. He explained what they had discovered about the possible connection between humans and Vex. Park tried to sit up. So our greatest strength against them is that we broke away from their hive mind long ago, Lee finished. We evolved to be unpredictable individuals. A Jorah officer burst into the room. Admiral, the loyal Jorah forces have captured the remaining traitors. They wish to make amends for the betrayal. How? Lee asked. By fighting alongside you, the Jorah replied. They say they have learned that freedom means nothing without courage. Park looked at Lee. Our fleet just got bigger. Yes, Lee agreed, but the Vex know who we are now, and they'll be coming with everything they have. Outside the medical bay window, the stars seemed to watch silently as the wounded fleet prepared for the biggest fight of all. Chaos erupted among the Vex ships. Without their shared mind, they moved like blind animals. Some crashed into each other. Others fired weapons randomly. 20 minutes until they adapt to our virus, Back reminded everyone on the bridge. Not a second more. Captain Park nodded. Choi, get us to position Alpha. Kim, coordinate our attack pattern with the rest of the fleet. The _Dauntless _ shot through the confused Vex formation, dodging debris and enemy fire. Choi's hands moved so fast, they were almost a blur. Each move was completely unpredictable, making it impossible for the Vex to target them. The rest of our fleet is engaging, Kim reported, using pattern Chaos 3 as planned. On the main screen, Park watched as human and Jorah ships attacked from multiple directions. The plan was working. The Vex couldn't coordinate their defense. Admiral Lee reports his team has disabled 3 Vex destroyers already, Kim said. Park allowed himself a small smile. Good. Now let's. A massive explosion rocked the _Dauntless _. The lights flickered and alarms blared. Direct hit on our port side. A crew member shouted. Decks 6 through 9 are damaged. Seal those sections, Park ordered. Maintain course. Another blast hit them. This time, the ship lurched violently. Several people were thrown from their seats. Some of the Vex ships are starting to coordinate again, Kim warned. The virus is wearing off faster than we expected. Park hit the comm button. Engine room. Report. No response came. Just static. We've lost contact with Admiral Lee's ship, another officer reported, and 3 more of our vessels are heavily damaged. Park looked at the tactical display. The situation was deteriorating quickly. The initial advantage of surprise was fading. The Vex command ship is starting to restore power, Kim said, her voice tight with tension. If they fully recover. They won't, Park interrupted. He turned to his communications officer. Send this to all ships. Fall back to position Delta. Repeat, fall back to position Delta. As the fleet began to retreat, Park gave new orders to Choi. Take us closer to the Vex command ship. Choi looked surprised. Sir, we're supposed to be retreating. The others are retreating. We're attacking. The bridge fell silent. Then Bake laughed over the comm. I knew you were crazy, Captain. Engine room standing by. The _Dauntless turned and accelerated toward the massive Vex command ship. As they approached, multiple enemy vessels moved to intercept them. Incoming message from Admiral Lee, the comm officer announced. He says we need to abort. His ship is crippled, but he's preparing a direct attack run on the command ship. Park gripped his chair. Put him through. Admiral Lee's face appeared on screen. His bridge was filled with smoke, and blood ran down his forehead. Park, get your ship out of here, he ordered. That's a direct command. I'm going to ram the Vex ship. Sir, that's suicide, Park protested. Lee smiled sadly. Sometimes, Captain, that's what it takes. The 7th Fleet was always expendable, remember. Now go save what's left of our people. The screen went dark. Park sat motionless for a moment. Then he turned to Choi. Full reverse. Get us out of the blast radius. The _Dauntless turned away just as Admiral Lee's damaged ship accelerated toward the Vex command vessel. A blinding light filled the screen as the 2 ships collided. The explosion was enormous, engulfing the Vex command ship and several nearby vessels. The shockwave hit the _Dauntless, sending it tumbling through space. When they regained control, Park looked at the tactical display. The Vex command ship was gone. The remaining enemy vessels moved erratically, like they had lost all purpose. They're retreating, Kim said in disbelief. The Vex are actually retreating. Around them, the surviving human and Jorah ships regrouped. They had lost nearly half their fleet, but they had won. Captain Park stared at the empty space where Admiral Lee's ship had been. Send to all ships, he said quietly. Mission accomplished. Admiral Lee gave his life to ensure our victory. The bridge crew stood at attention, honoring their fallen leader. Out among the stars, the battle was over. But the war had only just begun. 3 months after the great battle, Captain Park stood on a hill overlooking the rebuilt Jorah capital city. The blue-gray buildings gleamed in the morning light. In the center of the city stood a tall monument, a human and a Jorah standing side by side. It's beautiful, said Ambassador Tur, who stood beside him. Park nodded. The Jorah Confederation was healing. All 5 planets had been freed from Vex control. The enemy had not returned since their defeat. The last transport ship leaves tomorrow, Park said. Most of our crew will return to Earth. You have done more for us than we ever expected, Tur said. When we begged for aid, we thought Earth would send its strongest fleet. Instead, you got the leftovers. Park smiled slightly. And those leftovers saved our civilization. Back on the _Dauntless, the crew was preparing for the journey home. The ship had been repaired as best as possible, though scars still showed on its hull. In the engine room, Bekdu was arguing with a group of Jorah engineers. They wanted to give the humans some of their advanced technology. Your outdated equipment saved us, one Jorah said. But you should not have to use such old machines forever. Bake laughed. Keep your fancy tech. I like my old junk. I know how it works. But he did accept some Jorah crystal power cells. These might come in handy, he admitted. Lieutenant Kim Soo was in the ship's library, copying Jorah star charts into the human database. Her hands moved quickly over the controls. A young Jorah approached her. Lieutenant Kim, I wanted to thank you personally. Your battle plans saved my family on the third planet. Kim looked up, uncomfortable with the praise but managing a small nod. I just did my job. The Jorah Military Academy would like you to send us your tactical theories. The young alien continued. We have never thought of fighting the way you do. Kim almost smiled. I will write them down for you. In the medical bay, Officer John Hui was packing her equipment. Several Jorah doctors watched her work. Your treatments saved hundreds of lives, one said. Both Jorah and human. Jian shrugged. Sometimes you have to break rules to save lives. The Jorah doctors presented her with a case of special medicines, a gift from our people. May it help you save more lives in the future. At the main docking bay, a ceremony was held. The remaining crew of the 7th Fleet stood in formation. Across from them stood rows of Jorah officials. Captain Park, now wearing an admiral's uniform, addressed them all. 3 months ago, the 7th Fleet came here as the leftovers of Earth's defense force. Today, we return home as heroes. He paused. But we leave behind 42 of our own, including Admiral Lee. They gave their lives so that 2 civilizations might live in peace. A moment of silence followed. Then the Jorah leader stepped forward. The Jorah Confederation formally requests an alliance with Earth, he announced. We offer our technology, our resources, and our friendship. Park nodded. I believe Earth will accept. We have learned much from you humans, the Jorah leader continued. Not about advanced weapons or tactics, but about courage, creativity, and the strength that comes from being different. The next day, the 7th Fleet departed. As the ships rose into the sky, thousands of Jorah gathered to watch them go. On the bridge of the Dauntless Park looked at his crew. Choi Min at navigation, Kim Soo at tactical, Bak's voice coming through from engineering, and John Hua standing nearby. They had been misfits on Earth. Here, they had become legends. Course set for Earth, Admiral, Choi reported. Take us home, Park ordered. As the ships accelerated toward the stars, none of them knew that far away. At the edge of known space, a Vex observation post was sending an urgent message to their central command. The message contained a new designation for humans, primary threat. Ancient Ones returned. On a screen, images of the 7th Fleet's battles played in a loop as the Vex tried to understand how they had been defeated by the weakest ships Earth had to offer. And on the Dauntless heading home, Commander Kim Soo was already looking at star charts of unexplored space. She knew that someday the Vex would return. And when they did, humanity would be ready. Not despite their differences and imperfections, but because of them. The end.